Good morning, everyone. We number of you have joined us already, but we're just going to give people a couple more minutes to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, well, we'll get started now, even though people are still joining. Uh, Good morning, everyone. My name is David Yates. I'm a partner and head of the regional digital and data practice here at Al Tamimi, and I'm very happy to be in Muscat with my colleagues, who I'll introduce in a moment, to deliver this presentation to you. Artificial intelligence, risk and liability in Oman, legal strategies for governance and compliance. Just to let you know, this presentation is being recorded, and it will ultimately be posted at our firm's Tech Hub component of the website. We will have time for questions at the end, and if you can use the chat function for that purpose. Let me introduce my colleagues. First of all, we're very honored to be joined by Dr. Talal Salim, Senior Artificial Intelligence Advisor at the Ministry of Transport, Communications and Information Technology here in Oman. We have Ahmed Al Barwani. He's a partner of Al Tamimi and the head of our Oman office here in Muscat. And Michael Videlka, an associate in our office here in Muscat and a key part of our regional digital and data team. This presentation is going to start with a very practical description of how artificial intelligence works and how it's trained in language that us non-technical people can understand. We're doing that deliberately because it does set up it sets up very well a useful discussion on the legal issues arising from training of artificial intelligence and using artificial intelligence systems. And then we're going to end with some discussion about Omani public policy and the development of a responsible artificial intelligence framework here in Oman. And Dr. Talal will lead that discussion. Uh, so, with those introductions, Dr. Talar, can I hand over to you to start us off with the practical discussion of how AI works and how it's trained?
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here, to be honored to be in this panel. As we have just described, artificial intelligence, basically, I will be going through simple how much possible. Um, it goes back years 1940 when the efforts was um done by some scientists to how they can mimic a brain, how brain works. They try to computerize algorithms, right? So they can use as brain functions, so computer can work on same pattern. So there was a lot of efforts happens in 60s, 70s, 80s until 90s. We got some success when we able to recognize handwritten letters. Computer can recognize, but if we remember early days, we have very less compute power. But once we entered in year 2000 until 10, we have GPUs, we have more computing power, and we have got new algorithms came which can recognize even images and high resolution images and patterns within that. And from there, the success starts of modern day artificial intelligence. We have in the early days, it was only 7-layer neural networks. What's networks? Neural networks? It's a mimicking a brain where one neuron activates the other layer neuron, and it's so on. It goes until it reaches the end. So artificial intelligence, if we compare to traditional programming, it's little bit different. Traditional programming is instruction based. It starts with like we have example of airline booking of tickets or hotel booking. We just give some information, we get reserved, and we pay, and we get output done. But in this artificial intelligence, we actually trained based on data, and there is data is fed to the model, and model get trained. And these, how it works, it has three. One is the training phase, and one is then one is inference phase. In the training phase, what is where we developers train the model, and the inference phase where um, we start using these artificial intelligence model deployments. So let's talk about what's artificial intelligence. There, in artificial intelligence, it's a very broad term. Can you see next slide, please? Yeah. So artificial intelligence it has more than what we can say. So we have machine learning algorithms. We have deep learning algorithms inside. Within that, we have now deep learning, generative AI, and mobile kind of deep learning. So these are some research new in recent days. So let's talk about what is machine learning. Machine learning is where we have simple data is fed and we get predictions. Output has done, and there's many algorithms are there. For example, somebody can fed data and then predict next year when this winter will start based on last five years data. It may be start due to change of environment. It may affect the current year predictions. Deep learning, it's kind of where we have input can be image, for example, or video, and it can detects also objects inside, and we can get more insights. Is a person, what's his name, maybe what kind of things we can see in the images. It start getting more intelligent, and it get when we get to deep learning, it can solve problems which is more complex. And if we come to generative AI, where we just get multimodal, we have generates text on predictions, and this text it can be more. It is fed or trained by not just images or videos. It has a lot of text input inside. We can have a books, maybe we can have a journal, website information. A lot of information gets stored inside this model, and this model goes through training phases to get accuracy. It goes through maybe 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, and these requires first item is data is required for artificial intelligence. Second is model get trained. Third is the output, where output comes, and then we see on our screen. These models, artificial intelligence, has data. It can be based on supervised learning, unsupervised learning. So we heard these terms. Supervised means that if we train using an image, we label that image. If this image has some certain object, we may have a cup on the image, table, we have maybe person sitting, refrigerator. So we label all those things, and we make a data set based on label and train model based on the label data called supervised learning. In unsupervised learning, we just go through that, discover and learn by the convolution neural network, where objects and detect and become intelligent. We have reinforcement learning, which is based on trial and error. What's a transfer learning? Transfer learning, because we have just said that because of compute power, not everybody has huge compute powers. So what is transfer learning? We take a model which is pre-trained for certain tasks, and we just take the few final layers of the neural network and retrain those based on new data. For example, we have taken maybe a model which is very good trained on certain maybe household objects detection, but we just need, it can be detect some road objects. So we just take those new data sets and retrain, and that's called transfer learning. So all as we can see, today age, the next generation, which is generative AI, which is part of same deep learning, but it has more predicting capability using transformers, and it can intelligently can write for us maybe a story. It can take our text, it can correct our grammar, it can write for us emails, and so on. So I believe was a very, very short, very quick introduction from my side of artificial intelligence. And I pass to my colleague, David. David, you're muted, David.
Thank you, Dr. Dalal. Rookie error. It's very useful to have that understanding of how AI works and how it's trained, because getting into the legal issues, there have been several recent cases overseas which have considered whether training an AI system or using it to reproduce works amounts to an infringement of copyright. And they're all very recent. They're literally in the last few weeks. Uh, so there's an organization called GEMA, GEMA. You might have seen this case. This is the German Collecting Society for Musical Works. So it's in a court in Munich. GEMA sued OpenAI, the operator of the ChatGPT system, for copyright infringement concerning the lyrics of 9 well-known German authors. And what happened was the people had deliberately had gone into ChatGPT and prompted it to reproduce the lyrics of musical works, and what came out was a large part of the actual lyrics of the songs that the ChatGPT was prompted to reproduce. Gemma argued that the lyrics were memorized. That's the key term, memorized by OpenAI's language models. And so when the chatbot ChatGPT was used, it reproduced the musical works verbatim. OpenAI argued that its language models do not store or copy specific training data, but reflect within their parameters patterns learned from the training data set. And because the outputs were generated in response to prompts, responsibility for the output lay with the user, not with OpenAI. OpenAI also said there are various copyright limitations. But on the 11th of November, the Regional Court of Munich upheld Gemma's claims. It said that there was unauthorized reproduction of the lyrical works both in the language model and in the reproduction. And in the court's view, the memorization within the models and the subsequent reproduction of lyrics via ChatGPT each infringed the exclusive rights of exploitation, and none of the exceptions applied. So you have a case where OpenAI is responsible for copyright infringement because users are deliberately trying to reproduce the lyrical works. And again, the court said there was reproduction in the system and in the output. In contrast, and this was only in the 4th of November, all of this was this month. In the UK, the UK High Court, Getty Images and Stability AI uh, came to a different conclusion. Now, there are similarities in the reasoning, but the evidence was different. Here, the court said that the relevant AI system, Stable Diffusion, did not store data on which it was trained. Rather, it just learned statistics of patterns, and therefore there was no copying in the system. Uh, the courts confirmed that it's possible to infringe copyright with storage in intangible media, but in this case, that wasn't happening. And even though there might have been memorization, that word again, uh, in the system, that was something that, in fact, the stable diffusion system had been trained to avoid, and it was unlikely to occur in truth. The bottom line was Getty Images did not have enough evidence to show that the images had been memorized and that they would reproduce as copyright works. And so it does seem to come to a different outcome, uh, even though the evidence was different. And yet again, in a couple of months ago, in a US case, Kadri versus Meta, so this is the Facebook effectively, the court didn't look at whether the weights were copies, the statistics and the patterns were copies. Rather, it considered the fair use defense. Now, the fair use defense in copyright infringement in the US is quite unique, and one of the factors is whether or not the infringing work could damage the market for the original work in terms of selling it. Now, in the circumstances, the relevant artificial intelligence system, Llama, was held to not regurgitate the plaintiff's books. It couldn't reproduce the books. It might reproduce certain paragraphs, but not the entire books. And as a result of that, the court found that the fair use defense applied. So you have three different cases all in the last couple of months, which seem to come to different outcomes. And I think it demonstrates that the lawyers and the parties involved are still grappling with these systems and what evidence to bring before the court. I think many of these decisions are first instance and will likely be appealed, so that the matter's not settled. At this point, I'll hand over to Michael and Ahmed to start talking about, okay, well, under Oman law, what's the situation if something goes wrong in an artificial intelligence system?
Thank you, David. So, in terms of what goes wrong or what can go wrong in terms of artificial intelligence in Oman, the question is really um, who owed what duty to whom? Did they breach it? And was there harm that arose from it? Um, failures can arise, failures in AI models or systems can arise from model errors, so overfitting, distribution shift, data quality, or even bias, integration errors, so the right model but in the wrong workflow, human in the loop failure, so relying unreasonably on AI systems or inadequate oversight over AI output, and even security incidents. poisoning of information, injection of incorrect prompts or bad information, or even system compromise. The Omani civil transactions law sets out general liability for harm, and courts will, in Oman, award compensation for damage that is caused by harmful acts. Therefore, direct harm will attract compensation, and this is even without some sort of recklessness or uh, uh, mis yeah, recklessness or acting negligently. Um, so this ties into AI systems and the use of AI systems, and we should be wary when companies use or make use of AI to of the the damage or damages and liability that can be attributed to companies and people making use of AI. And examples of this could be where, for example, an algorithmic control causes a collision, and this is something that could happen with an autonomous vehicle, for example. And then the question is, who would be liable? And this could be any person within the AI chain. And I think this is something that we will get further clarity on as cases in relating to AI use become more common. But the people that or the persons in the chain that we can think of at this point are the developer of the AI model, the integrator, the operator from negligent use of the AI, the data controller, where AI uh, the use of AI involves processing of personal data, and or a platform where negligent configuration enabled harm as well. And we expect apportionment to be possible between persons who would be liable for damage caused by or relating to AI use. I'll hand over now to Ahmed, who will cover the contract portion.
Thank you very much, Michael, and I am really pleased today to be involved in this webinar. As it is the case, I believe, with many countries, AI-specific laws and provisions haven't been enacted in Oman. Nonetheless, entering into AI field, any party that would be involved would first thing would enter into contractual arrangements. And this, of course, will take the form of the software license or the system integration system or any other form of documents that the parties will be entered into and will govern their relationship. Therefore, it's very important to look very carefully on those contractual provisions in terms of the rights and the obligations and type of points that are very specific to AI and to be taken into consideration, like the warranties, the audit rights, and the change of control provisions. So those type of terms and provisions are, specifically will need to be looked at and ensure that, of course, they are enforceable wherever the parties are outside Oman or inside Oman, and whether the contract is governed by a foreign law or Oman law, that's something that needs to be considered. Generally, we see in the contractual terms there is prohibition of liability, and this is generally is not acceptable by Oman law unless it is attributed to negligence and willful misconduct. So if the party is in Oman one of the things which they would possibly push back and don't accept is the total exclusion of such liability, which might be possibly accepted in other jurisdictions under different laws. So that's in terms of the contractual arrangements. The other thing that can be looked at under Oman law is the consumer protection rights laws and regulations that provide some protection for the consumers. Under the definition of consumer, any party that will deal with any AI providers will be considered be consumer, and therefore the provisions of the consumer protection law will be applicable. Generally, the consumer protection law imposes duties on providers whenever they discover any defects that harm the consumers to notify the authorities. It will be Consumer Protection Authority in this case, and possibly recall such products or services. There is a process that has been outlined and described in more detail in the law and in the regulations. But the most important thing, the action will need to be immediate and, raised before the Consumer Protection Authority as soon as the defect is discovered. The other relevant laws under Oman law, which any party that involved in AI would need to be aware of, is the cybersecurity and cybersecurity laws, which is a specific Sultani decree had been issued in relation to the type of crimes that dealing with AI might attribute. And they have again outlined the penalties, they outlined the fines that will need to be paid and the party will be exposed to if there is any criminal act relating to, by way of an example, unlawful access or data system interference or any other acts that deems to be violating the Oman laws. Thank you, Michael. It's back to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ahmed. So the next point that I'd like to touch on is the data protection liability, or liability under the data protection law of Oman. As you all may know, the personal data protection law is the core law that is applicable to the processing of personal data. The executive regulations were issued in February of 2024, and we're currently in a grace period for compliance of the executive regulations, which has been extended to February 2026. In terms of AI, AI systems should be compliant with the personal data protection law, and any processing of personal data that is done through these generative AI systems must be compliant. The primary requirement under the personal data protection law is express prior written consent, and controllers and processors should have prior written consent before processing personal data of data subjects. Then electronic evidence and digital trust is the next sort of aspect where liability can arise, and the electronic proof is addressed in the law of evidence in civil and commercial transactions and the electronic transactions framework. And earlier this year, a new electronic transactions law was issued, and this modernizes trust services and e-signatures, which are relevant when proving model provenance signatures on AI generated outputs or integrity of logs. So any of these AI generated outputs should be tested against these laws. And we also expect courts to increasingly test the auditability of AI systems through these laws or through the lenses of these laws. Then from a public sector perspective, where government entities may rely on artificial intelligence for things like automated licensing or to evaluate the eligibility for benefits for people. These the remedies under government use of AI would follow administrative law pathways. And under the Omani judicial structure, unlawful administrative decisions can be annulled and compensation can be awarded. And this can arise from bias or procedural illegality in automated decision making. And so government entities should also keep this in mind when making use of AI. Now, I've touched on bias and discrimination, and the Omani law also deals with bias in various sectors or different laws. And the basic law of Oman sets out that citizens are equal before the law, and it prohibits discrimination based on certain factors like sex, origin, color, language, religion, sect, domicile, or even social status. This sets a constitutional backdrop for fairness in state action, and also it informs judicial interpretation. Then the labor law of Oman also explicitly prohibits discriminatory termination of an employment contract based on sex, origin, disability, pregnancy, or even union affiliation. And in this case, AI systems, where AI systems are used to determine whether or not a person should be dismissed or not, or is used in that evaluation, employers should be mindful of the liability that can arise through the labor law because of wrongful dismissal and the compensation requirements that are set out in the labor law. Then in terms of financial services and insurance, I think we've seen in recent times more and more companies use AI-based systems to evaluate insurance, perhaps premiums or insurance eligibility and eligibility for financial systems. And here, supervisors and companies are strongly encouraged to use AI responsibly and ensure data quality, and regulators would expect those companies to scrutinize those AI systems, the auditability of those AI systems, and ensure fairness in credit or insurance algorithms that are deployed in the market. Oman also released a public AI policy, which emphasizes ethical principles. These principles are, in brief, fairness, inclusivity, responsibility, transparency. And these are for both the public and the private sectors. And Dr. Talal will provide us with a little bit more insight into that later on. So when we think about who could be liable and on what basis, we can think about the developer of the AI system. And this can be from a damage perspective, a contractual perspective, and from a personal data protection law perspective. The system integrator or the deployer of the AI, and this would be the company that implements the AI. And in this case, again, this can be based on contract, consumer protection, the deployment of unsafe AI systems or to customers. Then AI, the end users. So these could be hospitals, banks, logistics companies. And here we would look at professional negligence. So relying unreasonably on AI, issuing advice or bad advice, incorrect advice based on AI. Employment law, where HR teams use biased AI systems or tools in terminating contracts. The data controller, and this would be linked to the personal data protection law and the unlawful processing of personal data through AI systems. And this can be things like not obtaining adequate consent, transferring data across borders unlawfully, things like that. Then cloud hosting and platform providers. These could also be based on contract. And then public authority, which I touched on earlier, which would be based on administrative law and the annulment or damages based on the inadequate use of AI there. Then criminal, there could also be criminal liability for criminal actors. So people who poison data or intrude or breach AI systems. And this would be primarily based on the cybercrimes law. And then finally, the corporate criminal liability, where juristic persons may be liable for crimes committed by their representatives or agents. And here there could be fines or penalties attached to that. So a few use case illustrations can illustrate how AI can be misused and give rise to liability. One that is the first one that I'll mention is clinical decision. So where, for example, a hospital deploys an AI tool that creates bias towards women and minorities, and it creates delayed treatment because of that. This could create a potential exposure to the hospital because of negligent reliance on the AI system or failure to validate or supervise the outputs of the AI system. And the PDPL issues or PDPL issues on training and interference where patient data without valid consent or transfer permits. So there could be then liability attached to that. Finally, medical practice rules could also come into play where medical malpractice uh, is is caused by unreasonable reliance on AI. Then HR, and I think I've touched on this as well, but basically where an employer could have a CV ranker where it ranks CVs based on certain criteria on the basis of AI, and it rejects a certain category of candidates, in this case, female candidates, for example, or male candidates. And if the tool then contributes to the termination of the employment contract, then, or the termination of the employment contract, then discrimination, the anti-discrimination protections would arise, and there could be both uh, penalties or even reputational damage. Here, it's important that AI systems include bias testing, of course, human review, and clear audit trails, so that the workings of the AI system are auditable, and the outputs are understood in terms of how the output was achieved. Then in terms of credit scoring, so where a bank or an insurer uses an AI tool to price risk, supervisors would need to test data quality and consumer protection. And if poor data governance causes denial of a rightful credit or a mispricing, then liability could arise under the insurance or credit laws of Oman. Then something that is perhaps closer to all of us is autonomous driving vehicles. We're seeing more and more of these on the road. And some of these systems are driven by AI. And where those systems, those AI driver assist or autonomous driving functions malfunction and cause an accident or damage to persons or things, liability can arise. And so again, the manufacturer of the product, of the AI system, of the vehicle may be liable. The developer of the AI system may be liable. And then recall procedures under the consumer protection law could be triggered to recall malfunctioning vehicles because of malfunctioning AI systems. And then in addition to that, criminal charges could also follow if the conduct meets certain thresholds. Then generative AI based on defamation or deep fakes. Here we've all seen videos or images on social media where these AI models are creating false or false images or videos that place people in situations that they were never in. And here the risk is that where an AI generated image or video or content makes a false allegation about a person or a competitor, then there could be there could be liability attached to that based on defamation. And it's important there that adequate warnings or safeguards are implemented, and people are made aware that they're watching or viewing something that is generated by AI, and that is not something that actually happened, or that person is in that situation as depicted in the output. And of course, if content or data handling breaches cybercrime provisions or the PDPL, then there could be administrative or criminal action. So now I'll hand over to David, who'll go over some compliance and governance checklists aspects.
Thanks, Michael. As Ahmed and Michael have explained, there's no specific AI law in Oman, but there are a raft of laws that today govern procurement and use of AI systems. And not only do we need to be aware of those, we can make some recommendations on what to do in order to give yourself the best chance of complying with those legal requirements. So first of all, map the AI uses and data flows. You need to identify controllers and processes, purposes, data categories, model types, etc., and whether personal data is involved. And then be PDPL ready by design. So that involves, as Michael described, consent, uh, appropriate notices, data protection impact assessments, record of processing activities, aligning vendors, and plan for the inevitable data breach. Because if we haven't had a data breach yet, you're probably going to have one. Checking bias and fairness controls. On the one hand, artificial intelligence systems, if used properly, can eliminate our human inbuilt biases. On the other hand, they can have biases built into them. And this means there should be always human in the loop, is the phrase, where decisions have significant effects. Contract risk allocation. Ahmed was talking to us about the importance of contracts under the relevant law, use fit for purpose warranties, service levels, ensure that you receive the benefit of improved products and services because these things are evolving all the time. Appropriate indemnities and liability caps subject to the limits under the Omani law. Be ready for, in the case of consumer AI products, safety and recall. Be ready to respond when products are called, and be conscious of your dependence upon them. Security hardening. So you need to run through the threats that you could be exposed to when adopting an AI system. You need to understand what vulnerabilities there are, and you need to know what logs are available to support forensic proof under Oman's evidence and electronic transactions frameworks. We're expecting increasing sectoral and industry regulation. We need to ensure that our people are properly trained, and at Al Tamimi, we're working on that as well. You need to consider what insurance is available. Insurance can lag behind technological developments. And then, as Michael was describing, if AI is used in the public sector, it's critical that all appropriate policies and procedures are still followed, and that there's human review to withstand administrative law scrutiny. Now, I'm conscious of the time, and I really wanted to. There's a lot we could talk about, and I really wanted to head back to Dr. Talal for him to talk about the Omani policy on responsible AI, and to talk a little bit about his work in the area of responsible AI and ethical AI. Dr. Talal, if you could talk about that, and Michael, we might just skip ahead on the slides to get to that section.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Oman is we as we are at MTCIT doing our best efforts to write all the regulations, laws, and policies which covers in the field of artificial intelligence. So the recently ethical framework or responsible use of AI has been released in May 2025 recently. It's a set of kind of framework and its ethical guidelines, which is released by our National Program of Intelligence and Digital Technologies. And it is also a combination effort of MDCID plus regulatory authorities, which has written these regulations. And it covers artificial intelligence plus the modern day generative AI field as well. It covers ethical guidelines, AI software systems, devices where AI system runs, and how this can be systems and products or hardware should ethically follow our guidelines. And it's applicable to the public and private organizations, which is the government and private sector, both of them. And it's also these guidelines applicable to the developers or companies who are responsible for system delivery. Our ethical guidelines also touches on the fuel of AI, which is the data, which is used to train these models. It protects personal information which is used by AI systems. So it can be touch about fairness, use of AI systems, and also it should be transparent to the users. So, it ensures that AI system designed in a such fairly in a way that ensures equal representative all groups within the use of data, avoiding bias or discrimination in the system output data or decisions. So just talk about, Michael talked about clinical trials. Our ethical guidelines has another layer. It should be fair, not biased toward any group or toward any system any use. It's also touches on the transparency that our guideline says that AI system should be designed in such a way it provides clear understanding of their working mechanism behind decision making, how these AI systems are working in the background to make these decisions. So it should be transparent to the users. It should explain there's different stages we have in AI. Also during operational wise, and all the stakeholders which involves in AI should be traceable, so a decision can be made. So this system should follow transparency in their working in the generating results. So to ensure it has credibility and trust, and it's good to be accountable if there's accountability is required. So to ensure these systems to make sure that it can be monitored, there can be our guidelines says there should be not just monitoring, but some time to time evaluation should be seen of these systems that they are working as is required, responsibly, ethically, and in terms of system delivery, and also the users who are using the system of the society or institutions wherever it is deployed. Our ethical guidelines also covers inclusivity, is a human-centric, follows all the human rights, decisions. It should be aware of where the data will be stored, how it will be used, It's within Oman, outside Oman. The consent should be taken off before using any systems. Also, this ethical guidelines does not restrict our policies, creativity and innovation. At the same time, it gives some sort of guideline of using such a systems. So we can govern the use of development of artificial intelligence system in southern Oman, but also we have some framework which governs some sort of technical and ethical principles, so ensure that it can be responsible and secures these systems. So we can have innovation which can be trusted by the users, and it can be benchmarked using international standards as well. So this policy is actually a set of guidelines has been released, and it has actually objectives that all entities can follow to compliance with these ethical guidelines. The technical controls we mentioned of the systems, the entities who are using can govern when the developers deliver the systems, they can use these guidelines. Also, also can facilitate the legislative area as well. So how these systems, they can use these guidelines, how system are can help them to how systems are developed, how it's contributing to the area of AI, so we have more experience. The system itself can see where it has been any challenge or issue has been raised. They can monitor because of this guidance has been implemented and can be regulated by Oman. So this document is a kind of associated framework actually, which can be used to ethically responsibility use of artificial intelligence systems in southern Oman. So from so this copy of the system also can be available from MTCIT website. So as we have just said that our guideline, it can be, it's a living document. It will be improved in a couple of years more, but this is the first release, and it covers all the areas of ethical, areas of responsible use of artificial intelligence systems. It's about a human who is using system. It's a protection of the it's fairness of the system, transparency, and there also be accountable if there's anything liabilities there, and it should work as expected. And these ethical guidelines also implies when we are designing AI systems, training these systems, or deploying, or we evaluating any AI systems in Southern Oman. So that's from my side, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Talal. It's great to see MTCIT leading the way with that policy. I think we're seeing the law trying to play catch up in certain areas such as copyright. We have existing legal framework as we've discussed, but in the end, responsible use of this technology in a self-regulating way is the key. We have a question, and if you do have any questions, you can use the Q&A function and type it in. The question we have you already seen the regulators, authority, or government monitoring companies in their AI use? I'll start, and then maybe Dr. Talal, you might have a view on this question. I don't think I haven't seen monitoring of companies' AI use as such, but we have seen regulators concerned in particular industries concerned about misuse of AI, and particularly whether it be financial services, healthcare, critical industries like that. There's certainly a concern about the misuse of AI in ways that can cause loss or harm people. That's my response. I don't know, Dr. Talal, from a regulator, a government regulator point of view, how would you approach that?
Uh, this ethical guidelines is just been recently released a couple of months back, and we have not started its monitoring or its implementation. So it will be in the future, but at this stage, don't have started yet. Its monitoring, don't have
Yeah.
anything yet. Just
The
have
second
released.
que the second question's come in. When will the AI public policy be enforced? I think the answer might be in due course, uh,
Yeah,
rather than a specific date. And I think that's what other regulators in different countries are doing as well. They're allowing people to self-regulate, see how the market responds, and then they might have to take enforcement action at a later stage.
yeah.
I'm conscious of time. If there are any other questions, please do type them up. I'll give people another minute or two, uh, and then we'll wrap it up. As we've said, there is a fairly complicated layer of laws in Oman regulating AI use, and it is worth uh, in the responsible use of AI, not only to have regard to the policy that Dr. Talal was talking about, but the legal framework as well. And of course, we're here at Al Tamimi and Muscat are very happy to assist you if you do have any questions in relation to these topics. So on that note, I'd like to thank our speakers, Dr. Talal from MTCIT, Ahmed and Michael from Tamimi. And thank you everyone for attending, and we look forward to our next seminar. All the best.